When we talk about human rights, inevitable to speak of the United Nations Organization UN, and it's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is a document that was prepared by representatives of all regions of the world, with different legal and cultural background to establish the fundamental human rights that should be protected throughout the world. These rights were born when the human being saw his capacity for destruction and evil in a war situation, which is not only determined by the exclusion of violence but also by all the consequences that this level. One of them is immigration, and although this is a subject with which even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights begins in a moral chair, it is also true that it is one of the most fragile elements to his declaration in terms of freedom. This declaration begins in Article 1 stating that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And further on in Article 30 it mentions two important aspects. One, that everyone has the right to move freely and to choose their residence in the territory of a state. And two, that everyone has the right to leave any country, including their own, and to return to their country. However, a distinction emerged between people who leave their country of their own free will, migrants, and people who do so because their lives or freedom are in danger, refugees. For the latter, human rights guarantee the right to non-refoulement. But for the above, a wide range of civil and political rights emerged in international covenants such as the 1966 one, the Cartagena Compact on Refugees in 1984, and the Global Compact on Migration in 2018. They established that both migrants and refugees have the same universal rights and liberties that must be respected, protected, and fulfilled at all times, even if the person doesn't have the paper in order, since it is or doesn't mean that you do not have human rights. However, according to a news item issued by the UN on January 28 of this year, 2020, in a period from 2040 to 2019, it is estimated that more than 3,800 people have died trying to emigrate, in which last year at least 830 died in American continent and more than 1,800 in the Mediterranean. This shows us an inconsistency between theory and practice, since the figure and experience show us that although very few countries interfere with the migration of their inhabitants, most of them care about the right to migration, evidenced in xenophobic, racist, and even physical violence acts when encountering a migrant, despite the fact that these rights have been agreed upon. Many of these treaties are not valid in some countries, and where they are, the state act at will. When the concept of emigration was taken up by the UN, it was taken as a realization that the basic freedom of human beings must be equally protected outside and within borders and throughout their migration process. However, in practice, migrants or refugees face vulnerable situations in the face of human rights violations, for example, trafficking and human trafficking, deprivation of access to health, prolonged or arbitrary detention, and even torture. But not only that, but when they manage to cross the border, they are exposed to exploitation and marginalization. The reason that some instead use the argues their action to stop immigration and execute these terrible acts is based of the supposed vulnerability of the security where the migrants are the entry suspects. Finally, I think that the state have forget humanity and have put it under prejudice and violence. When answering me about whether human rights exist, it is evident that they are there, but that their existence has so many limitations that they make it so diffuse until its invisibility, which makes me think that human rights only exist for a few humans.